No, in fact, it's fine. We have Jeff, who does our editing from Studio Timbo.
Jeff, sorry, yeah.
Who does the editing for Studio Timbo. He gets it every week. Normally, last week, many of you may have noticed that we didn't do our normal sign out, and it's only because I was so excited. For those of you who tuned in last week or did not, let me introduce you what we're doing. We have Nathan Dowdell with us. He is the game designer for Star Trek Adventures. We're gonna ask him a lot of questions. Last week, boy, we got into his background, his first experience in RPG, the first book he picked up, his mentality behind getting new people into the game, the 2D20 system, the history of that. And so there's a wealth that we just talked about. This week, we're going to focus on other things. I'm Michael Dismuke with Continuing Conversations. I'm also a freelance writer for Star Trek Adventures RPG and a contributor to Continuing Missions, the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures RPG. And Jim Johnson, let's introduce yourself.
Sure thing. Jim Johnson. I am the project manager and line editor for Star Trek Adventures RPG, published by Mendipius Entertainment. I am super excited to have Michael here, as always, as my co-host, and then super excited to have Nathan back with us again as our guest. So Nathan, would you please introduce yourself to the fan base?
I'm Nathan Dowdell. I'm the lead designer and developer for the 2D20 system at Mendipius Entertainment. And amongst the games that I've produced is Star Trek Adventures, which is and remains one of my proudest achievements.
Awesome. And I want to add an asterisk to that because I forgot to do it last episode. But Nathan should properly be announced or introduced as the award-winning systems designer. Nathan Dowdell, because a number of his RPGs systems have in fact gone on to win industry awards. So huzzah and congratulations for that. I was there. I saw the awards. I got pictures. I got the proof. So congratulations on all that success. It's well deserved, and I hope it's the foundation for even more in the future.
One I count at this point, because they're all games are team efforts. The one that I count especially is the Silver Award for Best Rules for Star Trek Adventures. I got sent the medal from the NE award for that one. So that's the one that I count. The rest it was part of a team effort, but that one I claim as my own.
Yeah. What does that feel like? What does that feel like, Nathan, to put that much effort into something and then be awarded by the industry for that?
It's not something that I typically think about. It's fairly common at least from my conversations with other people in the industry. It's fairly common in the industry to have a real sense of imposter syndrome, because a lot of the work that we do is kind of off by ourselves in isolation, just tapping away and getting the games made. So thinking about it in those terms, in those kind of big terms, it's a little bit bewildering. I think I'm not really sure what to make of it, even several years after receiving the award. It's a nice thing that happened intellectually, but I don't really feel an influence of it.
Well, hooray for you. It's really good. And it's, as we talked about the last episode, best game system I ever played. That's my personal opinion. And so a well-given award. So today we're going to focus a lot more on Star Trek Adventures. Last time we focused more about you, your career, your passion. So give us an idea. If we were to look in on Nathan Dowdell's average day working for Mendipius, doing what you do, where is he at? What's he doing? I know you told me that during a heat wave once you had to go sit in a coffee shop, but where would we normally find Nathan Dowdell working?
I mean, most of the time, I would be either sat on my sofa with laptop up on a little tray table in front of me, or sat at a desk in my home office writing. The home office is somewhat subjective because I moved house last year and it isn't set up, and the office in the new place isn't set up again yet. But I will frequently, at minimum once a week, try and get out of the flat to write in a coffee shop or somewhere like that, just to give myself a change of scenery and stretch my legs a bit. It's kind of necessary. I live alone and I work from home, so I need those opportunities to go out there and actually interact with other people and get some fresh air and so as much fresh air as you can get in the middle of a city.
And so, are there certain settings that inspire? You mentioned a coffee shop, but do you ever find any other settings that inspire you to write?
I've tried a few different places here in Nottingham. We've got a couple of really good gaming cafes that's kind of catered to kind of different clienteles, where one is very much, it's a friendly local gaming store that also happens to be a cafe. And the other is very much, it's a bar cafe that's also got a huge games library and rents out tables for people gaming. So they kind of serve different clienteles. But during the day, when most people aren't really, when most people are at work, they're a nice quiet environment to sit and get some work done. Being surrounded by games and people who game is often quite conducive to that. But beyond that, just somewhere quiet and comfortable and where I can stop and have lunch without going too far. That's normally about the minimum.
That sounds right. Jim, I never asked you that. What's your preferred writing location?
Actual writing. So I still use, where is it? I still use for all my drafts. I got this old ancient AlphaSmart Neo. This is what I write all my first drafts of everything on. And it doesn't connect to the internet. It doesn't have any games. It doesn't have any, it's really just a glorified electronic typewriter. And in fact, I have to plug it in via USB into my computer and then manually dump the text into a word processing program. But this has served me so well for 20 odd years now that I can, and it's so light. I mean, it's as light as a regular keyboard, right? And I can take it literally anywhere. Like the batteries in this thing do not die ever. It runs on three AA's. And I've taken it to, I've written on airplanes. I've written on the sides of mountains. I went to New Zealand for my honeymoon and we were in Hobbiton, the set and the Hobbiton. So I brought it with me in my backpack and I did a little bit of writing in Hobbiton. So I don't have a preferred place to write really. I just try to get out, especially I try to get outside when I can because I like to have trees and nature and sounds and stuff, but I also listen to music when I'm writing. So I've always got my headphones on.
Well, I have to ask, do you have a backup of that just in case something happens to it?
No, because it's indestructible. It won't die. I mean,
I'd be searching for two backups. Yeah. No,
it's solid state memory, and once I get it onto the computer, I dump it all into Scrivener, and Scrivener is automatically saved to the cloud. So I'm never gonna. I mean, never. All things being equal, something will happen. Like there'll be an EMP burst or something, and we'll lose it all. But but no, I don't really have a preferred place to write. I mean, lately, especially because over the last couple of years, I've been making the transition from writer to project manager. I don't do as much writing on the game as I used to. I do a ton of editing, right? And all of that has to happen on the computer because I can't make it portable. I mean, sometimes I could use my laptop and do it, but it's just much easier to be at the desktop, cranking out the editing and then the layout revisions and the proofreading and stuff. But when I'm doing fiction writing or I'm doing my own kind of stuff, I've got my Neo and I'm literally anywhere in the house if I need to change a scenery or change a pace or something.
Sounds great. Cool. I like knowing that. Good. Okay. So
hold on. Let's get serious. What's your preferred zone of writing?
Very much similar to you. I do have the most amazing office setup. I have a home office and I'm looking right now at a giant screen plus a screen TV plus my laptop. And I love it for research because I'm a very big, put all my research on the side, drop everything in the middle and go. Mm-hmm. So that's super convenient. So when I have to do a huge project, then I'm definitely going to choose this as my location. However, if I'm just writing stories, not working about mechanics or editing, I take my laptop and I go outside in the yard. I have a nice yard view of the Bay Area. So that's it. Or I love going on business trips. I tend to, for some reason, write amazingly when I'm on business trips. Maybe even at a bar. I'm sitting at a bar by myself, got a laptop and I'm just writing. I just like that environment. Even the airport inspires me. But yeah, definitely that's my setting.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, Star Trek Adventures. Let's get back into it. Nathan, if you had to give an elevator speech pitch as to why someone should pick up this game, Star Trek Adventures, what would that elevator pitch be?
It's the only Star Trek RPG that has ever focused on recreating Star Trek style storytelling. Telling stories like those that you see in the episodes of the TV the various TV shows. That was always the focus from the start. It wasn't, you're all an ensign, now work your way up to having any rank.
Yeah,
it was always okay. If you could see it on the screen, you can play that.
Powerful. That's a great elevator pitch. I think that's really good.
Yeah,
Jim, would you add anything to that?
No, I think especially that last little bit you said, where if you can see it on screen, you can play it. I think, to be transparent and clear, like I love the fact that was the design intention from the very beginning. I think it's taken us a few years to get to the full scope of that, partly because, and this is certainly no fault of anybody's, partly because all those new series came out, right? So like we didn't know Discovery and Picard and Lower Decks and Prodigy. We didn't know those were all coming. I think maybe we had heard about Discovery when we were developing the game, but for the most part, we didn't know how much deeper the setting would get in the 5 years that the game's been out. And I think over a course of years, like especially once we brought up the Klingon book and then the player's guide, we were able to even expand that scope even further, right? But yeah, I think at this point, now that we've got a good backlist of stuff behind us, I think I would struggle to imagine if there's anything on screen in all of the 55 years of Star Trek that you couldn't do in the game with a little bit of work or a little bit of tweaking. So I think we've gotten to the point where we've been able to fully realize it, all based on that core book from the very beginning, because that was the foundation of everything, and it was so good. And I know my group, when we were playing testing it, we were so excited because this is like somebody finally gets Star Trek the way we want to run it at our game table to where we wanted it to be. So no, that was a great elevator pitch, and I'm glad we recorded it because I'm going to I'm going to transcribe it and adapt it. So thank you.
Right. I had to ask that question. So then this would probably be the second follow-up question in the elevator pitch is, do you need to know Star Trek before playing this game? Nathan.
Question.
I would personally recommend it because it means that you've got that natural on-ramp. But the game is designed to try and encourage those kind of Star Trek-like outcomes and that kind of style of story and that kind of feel at the table. Anyway, I've heard plenty of testimony from people that have said it feels like Star Trek. Even people that don't know Star Trek end up playing it like Star Trek would play out.
And I have, and again, going back to what I told you before, in 3 cases where I played it with someone who never knew anything about Star Trek, they asked me right after, which Star Trek show should I start watching?
Oh, yeah.
And that was amazing to me. So I got my little niece watching, started her on Prodigy. And my nephew, I said, you're more of a Voyager person, So I started launching in that. So that was kind of cool to me.
Yeah. Very cool.
All right, good. And so now I'm going to ask, the whole product line so far, Star Trek Adventures RPG, yeah, maybe you might say the core rulebook, but what is your favorite product so far, Nathan? What are you laughing at, Jim?
I mean, I want Nathan to answer, and then I'll provide color commentary.
Okay. It could be even a page or a part of it. Just something that you really love.
Honestly, it's still going to have to be the core book, the very start of it. I put a lot of effort into that, and I feel really proud of what it came together as, with the contributions of all the other writers that were brought on, and the artists and so forth. And I know the LCARS design is a little bit divisive in some cases. Not everybody reads it as easily. I still think it looks amazing on a tablet.
I had to go get my book just so you could see how tattered it is now. Fortunately, I have 2 backups plus 2 Klingons plus the TO the tricorder kit. But look how I've used this to death at this point.
Yeah, I taped mine up, but mine's got the same kind of look and feel to it. Yeah, absolutely. Nathan,
my copy is much more intact, but that's mainly because I don't really look up much in it because I know what's in.
Mm-hmm.
I've got that kind of memory for game mechanics where I don't really need to look up much during play.
Yeah.
So I normally have the book on the table for the players to look at more than myself.
Yeah, I refer to it a lot, mostly because I know what's in it, but I don't always remember the exact page numbers. And so when people online are asking questions or they can't remember a thing, I'll pull out the core rule book and flip to the page and give them the page reference on social media or something, just to help them navigate. Because I guess some of them still don't know how to use a search engine or to use the PDF search function, which is fine, right? I mean, I will admit that core book, like in terms of like the index, it's a little hard to navigate sometimes. But using a PDF and the search engine within the PDF is so easy to put in a search term and find it. So
we'll do an episode on Control F and help people out.
Yeah, Control F. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I was going to ask something now. I can't remember what the heck it was. It was
my initial question was favorite.
I don't know how Nathan feels about it, but like asking what's your favorite product, in a given game line or something. Like for me personally, for Star Trek is like how do I pick my favorite child, right? Like how do I pick my favorite candy or something? It's just like there's so many, and like everyone. I mean, Nathan's worked on a lot of the books. I've worked on most of the books. It's like each book has a different story, like in terms of its inception and creation and stuff. And I don't know that I have a favorite. I think the Command book is kind of special to me because that was my first real book that I kind of like was involved in the majority of it. But the core book has a special place too for 2 reasons. Number one, it gave me an opportunity to do some writing on the game that I love so much. Star Trek is such a huge important property to me that I really wanted an opportunity to get into this game at the ground level, almost the ground level, because I had missed out on working on Last Unicorn games, and I just missed working on Decipher's Star Trek game, because at the time Decipher had both Lord of the Rings and Star Trek. I was already deeply working on the Lord of the Rings game, and I was starting to talk to the people who were involved in Star Trek, and they started sending me some of the material so I could start working on the next generation. They were going to do a next generation book, and I was starting to get my hands into like what was that going to look like. And then the company collapsed and the licenses went away. I was like, oh, I just missed the opportunity to work on Star Trek. But yeah, so
one of the things I feel, just my personal observation of you, Jim, I also feel a lot of your passion was in the Gamma Quadrant book. That one, we've talked. No, Gamma.
Oh no, Gamma. No, you're right, Gamma.
Yeah, I felt I felt because I know you're a lover of DS9. So let me, based on that, Nathan, whether it was intentional or not intentional with the game design, I guess both of you can answer this because I've talked about it before. These have become the official, in my opinion, guidebooks to the Star Trek universe. We know that there's, you can get stellar cartography maps. You can go out there and you can buy a Voyager book. But I compare them. I read them both. And if I have to write something or really needed to get details about Star Trek, these books are super comprehensive. Nathan, was that intentional? What drove that?
So a lot of the kind of the overall early project management for the core rulebook before Jim took over in that regard was led by Samantha Webb, who was head of RPGs, kind of just moved into the head of RPGs role at the time. She's moved on to other jobs in the company because no one stays still for long, in with me, because I'm happy where I am. But a lot of the early intention was that we would assume that you already had a decent, or at least a basic foundation of Star Trek knowledge, and already had enough of and anything that you didn't really know could be found about the basics of it could be found easily online, places like Memory Alpha. If it's good enough for Simon Pegg when he was writing Star Trek Beyond, it's good enough for everybody else. So, and I referenced it extensively during the core during development. So a lot of the intent was to kind of, with the background material and things like that, was to more flesh out rather than provide a basic primer. So all of our sidebars, or all of our background sidebars, were all done from different cultures' perspectives on other events. Showing perspectives beyond the basic one, kind of showing different ways of looking at things and looking maybe a little bit deeper in some places. So the idea of them being kind of a go-to first source, I don't think it was ever intended. I just think that comes out as a result of the passion of the people involved.
Yeah, because it really points you in the right direction. To that point, you're right. It is definitely an add-on to the base information, which for me drives me back to the online sources to get more details if I need to. But the online sources where they give you the facts, Star Trek Adventures oftentimes gives you the feelings behind, like, say, the Dominion War and what was going on, those perspectives. That's interesting that you say that. Jim, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that that's absolutely, like, I mean, I certainly can't know what Samantha's thought process was in starting to develop it, but I think I get it. But it's certainly an intention of mine to continue to deepen that. And I think to what you're saying, though, is I think when you are approaching a role-playing game, and in fact, I really strongly felt this when we were developing the Discovery book, and you're presenting that setting. Like we as RPG writers and game masters even, we have to go into so much depth on a setting and to like figure out how does it work, what's the connective tissue from Enterprise to original series, including Stranger Worlds and Discovery, and how does that all fit? And it's not just here's what happened, right? We have to go to the next level. We have to go levels down so that when you're creating a character, the character understands what's happened, because the characters would know. And the more you know as a player, the more realistic your character is going to be when you're playing it. And I think that's why I love the old RPG stuff, like the FASA and the Last Unicorn games, and even the Decipher stuff. Like they try to get into some of that, where they weren't just presenting the surface of like, here's what happened in Star Trek, and here's what Ferengis are, and here's what Klingons are, but like to take that next level to say, well, this happened here, and this happened here, and this happened here, and then now you've got this culture, and now you've got all these things that happen, and you got all this texture and detail that an RPG you got to have for an RPG in order to create characters and to create storylines that feel like they fit, right? And so I am always kind of like that feeling that Nathan was talking about earlier, or maybe in the last episode, where you're kind of nonplussed about the response that you get from fans, that they're like, oh, these are great reference materials. I'm using these to help write my fan fiction, or I'm using these to help develop my characters and stuff. You put so much detail into these. This is great. And it's like, okay, that's awesome. Like they're like, we're intentional about it, but it's not like we're consciously thinking about it. So it's like, I just know, I guess as a longtime gamer, I guess I just know intuitively how much detail we need to put into the books to give gamers the best chance of really telling a good story that feels like Star Trek. And I think to get that Star Trek feel, you really need to dig down deep into it. And, you don't have to watch every episode, because like, who's got time to watch 1,000 hours of Star Trek other than, me and Nathan, I'm sure. and you, Michael. Yeah. But I think the more detail we can put into the books, that's going to save gamers time, right? Because they don't have to go watch the 1,000 hours of episodes, because we've already done it, but we've done the work, and now we're distilling it down into a format that hopefully makes sense, so that you can pull out all the little nuggets of gold out of the books and make use of it.
Yeah, it pinpoints the episodes too, because there's been times where I'm like, ooh, I totally missed that, especially with the Discovery campaign. We talked about that one.
Right.
The book motivated me to go watch it again, because I was like, there was so much glamour to the show that I was missing some key details. So that was a really well-designed book. Nathan, I haven't even asked, do you play in a regular group yourself? Do you play through the game? Do you have time?
I'm not playing in a current Star Trek Adventures group. I've only recently started getting back to face-to-face gaming, and can only really spare the time for one regular group every other week. And at the moment, that's a Warhammer 40,000 Wrath and Glory game with a few friends. The majority of my Star Trek Adventures play is demonstration games and one-offs and things like that. And I find that, a good one shot is very much its own kind of experience, separate from the benefits you get from a long term campaign. I'm very much a proponent of being able to do like short curated campaigns and one off games that stand on their own.
Yeah, good. So now in hindsight, again, you've been working on this before 2017, before it came out. Is there anything that you would do differently if you could go back and tweak something?
From the original core, from the original game as it was first released, yes, there are a few elements of that I would have handled differently. And I'm grateful that we had the opportunity with the Klingon core book to address some of those. So the character advancement and the renown and reputation rules were a good opportunity to deal with an issue that I had. In fact, I hadn't really given myself the time to develop properly in the original form. And beyond that, just the opportunity to polish it a little bit further and refine on what we'd already established. Because as much as the core of the game is there and is solid, the way it's presented and the way it's represented on the page can always be iterated upon. Any RPG is there's always a tension between this is a manual for learning how to play the game versus this is a reference that for you to go back and look at afterwards. And what serves one goal won't serve the other. So you've got to find the balance between the two, and no one gets it right first time.
Right. Yeah. And I know it's constantly in development too. I know Jim is constantly, looking in new books to present because of that. Do you have a favorite Easter egg that's maybe in one of the books that you think people don't cherish enough? I like asking those Easter egg questions.
I mean, not entirely cherish enough. I think it will be overstating the response I'd expect from it. But in every single list of science-based focuses in the Klingon core book, I mentioned time travel because Klingons seem to have been the ones that invented it in Star Trek.
Okay.
I also put in at least one reference in the Klingon core book and in the command book of Shakespeare in the original Klingon.
Mm-hmm.
That's so funny. I ran into a YouTube performance of that the other day. Jim, I like asking you too, do you have a favorite Easter egg?
Oh, geez. There are so many.
Golden comics.
What?
I remember once you really liked the one about the comic series.
In the Shackleton book, yeah, because we had Rich Handley, who was the editor on the Hero Collector comic book series. I asked him to write a sidebar, and he dropped in Kia Gold, which I thought was very, very subtle. I mean, that was all him. I appreciate it, but I know fans like that. I don't think I have a favorite Easter egg, and part of the reason I say that is I know it's a dodge. But I have such a short memory for these books is like I am so super hyper focused on one book to make sure it's as good as it can be before I let it go and move on to the next one, that when I move on to the next one, I have to like mentally purge my brain to kind of like clear the RAM so that I'm ready to go on to the next book. And so and that's why when we do those videos, Michael, about the older books, they're only 5 years old. But I'm looking at them fresh again after years and like, oh, shoot, I don't remember half the stuff that was in here. This is great stuff. Or, I had forgotten all these details. I'm sure there's some, I know that some of and I'm sure I'm not the only game master who's gone on to work on RPGs that does this, but I drop in Easter eggs from my old campaigns. So my old ship names, my old character names, some of the situations, they're sprinkled in there. But those are Easter eggs that are more for me and for my group if they ever bothered to read the books. Average fan is going to read it and it's just they're not even going to see it. They don't have the history or the context, right? So no, I don't have a favorite. I think I threw in the Pack-Leds into the core book in a couple sidebars. I thought that was kind of fun, and then they just kind of became a thing for me. The Pack-Leds. I always try to include Pack-Leds somewhere in the book. So the command book and the sciences, a couple other ones have Pack-Led references. I was able to do that piece of artwork for the Gamma Quadrant book with the Pack-Leds. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. So yeah, I don't know that I have a favorite Easter egg. I do appreciate though, and in fact, I'll just say that some of my writers put in Easter eggs that I'm confident I'm missing, but I trust them. And of course, we get Paramount to approve everything anyway. So I'm sure, like Aaron, I'm sure he's dropped in some Easter eggs that have completely gone over my head, and I'm sure he's satisfied that they're in the book still. But
I've done some too, but if I tell you, then you're gonna have to look for them. I'm not going.
No, it's okay. It's okay, and that's fine because like they're in there because they're in there, and they give you a sense of satisfaction that they're in there, which is great because that's something we get to do because we're working on these books, and when we're working on them late at night or something, we drop in these Easter eggs, and sometimes the fans catch them, and sometimes they don't, and that's okay.
Yeah, the most obvious one I had that it was so obvious, but still I feel it was an Easter egg was giving 7 of 9 Shunkatsu in the Picard thing. I was like, I can't believe that got passed.
Yeah,
I thought that was my homage to The Rock. Okay, so Nathan, question to you then: where do you envision Star Trek RPG going in the next, say, 3 to 5 years? There's so many more shows and stuff going on. What do you envision happening?
The ideal for me, rather than because I'm not the one that leads any of the project management or decides what gets made, but the ideal would be continuing to take advantage of all the new material that Paramount keep doling out to us. I have thoroughly enjoyed Strange New Worlds, and can't wait to see where that goes further. I'm eagerly looking forward to the new season of Lower Decks, which is due to arrive any time now. And for anybody that was paying attention during Comic-Con, there's going to be a Lower Decks and Strange New Worlds crossover, which is just they actually said, I rewatched the panels, they're going to have Boimler and Beckett in live action in Lower Decks. And there was also mention of a strangely buff animated version of Pike as well.
This is going to be incredible. I can't wait. I love that Star Trek, they take themselves seriously, but they also have this humorous side, which placates the fans too. I remember, no, I can't tell that story yet. Darn it. Never mind. NDA. Okay. All right. So then with that said, go ahead.
Yeah, basically, yeah. I'd want to carry on doing products that tie in with the newer shows and whatever else gets produced. If we could get the Prodigy right, I could see that being an amazing kind of lower age group starter set.
Yeah.
Yes.
Type product. Yeah, aiming a little bit lower, simplify the rules a little bit. Mm-hmm. For that demographic.
You have my drawing now. That's wonderful.
The opportunities just to carry on playing in that sandbox.
Right.
I just love it, and while I get dragged off to work on other projects and other games and the system in general, I'm glad that every so often Jim drops me a set of rules that have just come out of the writers for me to check over, so I can make sure that they're all up to the same sorts of standard that we set with the in the beginning. And does occasionally ask, we've got this big project come up, do you want to be involved in it? If I can find the time, then absolutely.
So then I got to ask you then, going back in time, the story you told us in the last show, how you first picked up your first RPG. How old were you, by the way? I didn't even ask you when you first.
I was 17 back then, so it would have been about 20 years ago because I'm 37 now.
Okay, so thinking about that, when you picked up that first book at age 17, you hardly thought maybe you'd be where you are right now, writing on a major IP, not just one, but others, for the RPG industry. What about your future? Where do you want to go? How can we help you get there? What do you envision or want?
Honestly, I'm so thankful to have achieved what I've already achieved that it almost seems greedy to ask for more. I've got ideas that I'd like to develop in future that I'm not ready to share with anybody beyond the guy I see in the mirror every morning. Simply because they're in such an early stage that I'd want to flesh them out more before I started showing anybody else about them. It's all fairly vague, and I'm content to carry on carrying on for the time being, seeing what other projects Modiphius is going to send my way, and seeing the opportunities that produces. And if that means getting to work on more Star Trek, then it's a hard life.
Well, whatever member of DTI transported into that shop when you were 17 and put that book, just poked it out a little bit for you to see, made a great impact on the future of Star Trek Adventures RPG. So we totally appreciate it.
It wouldn't have just been that. It's been various things. As I said, I've been watching Star Trek since I was a small child. Grew up with TNG, and I'm one of those guys who, as a kid, I had the TNG technical manual, and the thing disintegrated from use. It fell apart. I can still, almost from heart, reference obscure technical details about Star Trek technology. And as skilled as a GM, that's not bad. It's not a bad one to have.
I'm going to test you on that one day. I'm going to be like, okay, what's the part right above the matter ejector assembly? I'm going to just create a bunch of trivia questions for you. That's awesome. Jim, what about you? Any other questions?
I was going to ask Nathan. So, aside from Star Trek, obviously, and if you can't answer this because you've got thoughts in your hide, like if there was one game setting or IP or thing that is like you're super passionate about that you would like to do, like that you would like to work on, what is it? Is that something that you can share, or is that you're going to hold that close?
This is one that I have shared a few times. Given the opportunity, I would leap at the chance to write a tabletop RPG for the Mass Effect universe.
Mass Effect, okay.
I've always been more sci-fi than fantasy, and for all that I started off with a fantasy RPG, and they're more common than sci-fi ones anyway. Sci-fi RPGs are a much bigger thing for me, and the Mass Effect series is one of my favorite newer sci-fi settings out there. Got
it. Okay, very cool. Was there something I was going to say something, but it's a totally a non sequitur now. But only because it came up earlier, I'm going to just drop it in here, even though that's not kosher to do for most reviews. But Nathan, I honestly don't remember if I ever told you, but this was pre-COVID, so it had to have been like 2018 or 2019. I was at a convention, and Michael and Denise Okuda happened to be there as well. And the way the convention worked is Friday nights, all the guests would be in this huge long hallway. We'd be signing books by the fans and stuff, right? And usually by 11:30, most of the fans had petered out, and we were just sitting there across the hall from each other, just staring at each other because we're bored. So what we would do is, writers, we would just pick up our books and wander around the tables and get people to sign them. At the time, I didn't have a book. I did not bring a book with me that Michael and Denise had worked on, but I did have my core book because I get fans to sign my core book, or at least I did back when we were doing conventions before the dark times. And so I took the core book over to Michael and Denise, and I asked them to sign it. And Michael spent probably 10 minutes flipping through it, and he said that he thought we did an amazing job of translating his Elcar's design into a book format. He hadn't seen that really before, quite to the extent that we had done it. And I don't remember if I told you or Mihao or the other design folks, but he and Denise were really impressed with the overall presentation, not just the design, of course, but like just what we were doing with it. And they were gracious enough to sign it for me. So I've got Mike and Denise's signatures in my book, but I don't remember if I had told you that, hey, we kind of have an informal blessing from Michael and Denise on the layout. Yeah. So that's kind of what I tell fans is like, I know you don't like the Elcars. I know you don't like the white text on the black background, but it works for the purposes that we needed it to do. Like, it looks great on a tablet and it looks great on screen. And visually, like I'm getting old, so my eyes aren't what they used to be. But I thought it was a really bold choice for the time. I remember the conversations though on Moxtra. We were like, "Are we sure we want to do a black background because it's so hard to read in print?" But we went with it. So, but I just wanted to make sure I gave you that anecdote, just because it came up in conversation.
I don't recall hearing it before, but yeah, very cool to.
Yeah.
If someone told me that, Nathan, I'd be like, "What? Are you serious? You're so mean." Like if Stan Lee ever said, "Michael, I read your comic book," and he's like, you get awards. You have the Elcar's designer, compliment it. You're like, "Yeah, all right."
I'm British. We master understatement.
Had to be restrained. Well, it's no overstatement to say that we've been belated in having you on Continuing Conversations. I mean, your name comes up everywhere. We're constantly discussing the books and the design and the system. So, Nathan, my shout out is actually going to go to you today as a huge shout out, because I just appreciate now meeting you a little bit better, seeing that your passion just for RPG and for storytelling has been noticed by Modiphius, and they're able to gift us with your talent every time you lay finger on a book. So my thank you is to you for that, Nathan. What about you, Jim? You want to give a shout out?
Yeah, I mean, not to embarrass our guests, but I do try to shout out you as often as I can on these different interviews, whether with Michael or other folks I interview with, to talk about the design and how great of a game you gave us, that we're able to build on it now, right? We're able to build these products all on everything that you've done. And I can't thank you enough for that. I mean, on a professional level, right? Because it's such a good game, and it makes it so easy for me as a project manager to build stuff on it. Because like, oh, I got this great solid foundation. We don't have to create new mechanics or try to make, like, we don't have to, kludge around it to make it fit. It's just like, it's already there. It's all there. It was all there in the core book. It was all there in the playtest documents, and then it went on from there. So thank you for that. And then, on a personal level, thank you for being so available. Like, I know that you are very busy with all the different stuff Modiphius is throwing at you, and yet you still find time to answer my emails when we get rules questions from foreign translators who say, like, we don't understand how this rule works. Why does this rule work this way? And then, like, I have to go into the Wayback Machine, like, how? I don't remember. And then I can bug Nathan, because Nathan's got a good memory. And it's like, do you remember this conversation? Like, in the Klingon book, why did we do this? What was our design reasoning for this? Because I can't remember. Because like I said, I have a short memory, but Nathan does not. And so I'm just grateful that you are still available to answer all those little piddly questions that, as a project manager, I should probably know. But because I am not the 2D20 SME, and I know you are, I'm grateful that I'm able to reach out to you. And yes, you are always on the top of my list for every book we work on. And I just know it's hard to get on your schedule to get you to do stuff. But like, absolutely, you are going to be first on my list to work on literally anything Star Trek related. And I know that's something that you appreciate. And I would love to get you writing more, but I know you're busy. So, and I know that, system design is a passion of yours. And as far as like Star Trek goes, like, the system's done for the most part, right? Except for little tweaks that you could make to it. So I totally get that you want to go on to the next big, interesting design challenge. But yeah, anytime you want to dabble, anytime you want to play in the Star Trek universe, don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I will find a way to get you into it. So thank you.
Nathan, any final words for our fans of Star Trek Adventures RPG who are listening in? I know I'm going to be watching this back a couple times, because you actually gave me some really good design and writing things to keep in mind that I need to go through all my current projects and make sure I'm following the ticking those off. But any final words for our STA fans?
The main one would be this: the game was meant very much as a toolkit. It's very much meant to be an assortment of tools and techniques that you can use to make your game whatever you want it to be. An RPG isn't complete without the GM and the group running it. I've done my part. It's up to you how you use what's there.
Ooh, passing the baton. Love it. All right. Well, that wraps up this episode of Continuing Conversations. Again, huge thank you to Nathan Dowdell. IDIC is how I always go out. Jim?
And live long and prosper. Be safe. Be well. We'll talk to you all next time, and we'll have Nathan on again someday again soon. But be well, everybody.